You have an avoidant partner and you want to know, what can I do to change the dynamic? What will help them open up more to me? What will help change this pattern that we have where I chase, they shut down, and they avoid? I'm sure you've tried most of the solutions that most people in this dynamic try, whether it's talking more, waiting for him to open up, or holding stuff in and waiting to see if he actually comes forward. And maybe you've tried other things like chasing him more, or threatening to end the relationship, or exhausting all your friends by talking about this particular issue and getting most of the same feedback. In today's video, we're going to talk about what decades of research tell us about this particular cycle, what decades of work as a clinical researcher and as a couples coach, working with thousands of couples, spending thousands of my own dollars as well inside of my own therapy, and hands-on work with other couples who have this dynamic, what that has taught me and what the data and the research says about this. I'm going to walk you through what is actually happening inside your avoidant partner so you can understand them a little better, so that you can understand what happens when my partner goes quiet, shuts down. And I don't mean the pop culture stuff, but the clinical, neurological attachment science version of this. And no, I'm not going to give you like poppy advice that you've probably heard before, like, well, just give him more space, or, well, he's just avoidant and he doesn't care about you, or he's emotionally inept and you should leave him. I do not want to give you surface level dating advice, because this dynamic happens even in good relationships. I'm going to tell you what he actually needs in order to open up, so that you can get that opening, have those conversations, and have both of you feel emotionally safe, comfortable enough to talk, and have him engage with you. And what couples need to do when they have this dynamic, what they can do together as a couple. And I'm going to be honest with you about what your particular role is in this dynamic and what his role is too, because this is not all on you. If you're the one who generally pursues and chases your partner, I know that you are most likely feeling completely responsible or feeling overwhelmed by the fact that you are the one who's pushing to talk and he's avoiding, disengaging, and that leaves you holding all the emotional stress or burden of the relationship. I can't stress this enough though. It's not all on you. Healthy relationships are teamwork. What helps couples, regardless of what the issue is, whether it's an avoidant, anxious attachment cycle or problem of chase and pursue and disengage and avoid, no matter what the issue is, whether it's finances, money, children, in-laws, whatever you have going on inside your relationship, a mindset that will be really helpful moving forward is that we have this problem and we have it together. It's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's ours. I own this, you own this. We create this problem together so we can create the solution together. Now, if you haven't watched my last video on the avoidant and anxious attachment style, in that video I broke down why avoidance and anxious people are oftentimes so drawn to each other in the first place. The attachment science of this dynamic, the attraction, the chemistry, and the whole cycle, and why the very thing that makes connection feel so intense initially inside this kind of dynamic, why it later turns into one of the most frustrating elements or patterns that couples can get into. You'll find the link down below, and I highly recommend that you check out that video. But for right now, let's talk about what you can do when you're already in this dynamic, when you're in this cycle, when he's shutting down, or you're ramping up and feeling more abandoned or frustrated, or your voice is getting louder and bigger and your emotions are getting stronger and you're trying to knock and pound at his emotional walls that he's putting up. Let's talk about what you can do as you're gearing into that space and what's happening for you guys. Before we go into strategy, I want to take a moment and just name what this experience is like for you, because I don't think enough people do that. I don't think that you get enough empathy or understanding of what it's like to be the person that wants to talk, that chases, that holds things in, and has a partner who is less emotionally expressive and has a partner that tends to shut down. Now, if you are the partner that pursues and wants to have the conversation, You're either called the pursuer or the anxiously attached individual. And here's what happens for you. When you start to feel that things are really hard or disconnected somehow, you want to talk about it. You want to feel heard. You want to check in. But to consistently, chronically feel unheard, like you could pour your heart out and the conversation just doesn't land or your partner just shuts off, it makes you feel alone. And it's not the kind of loneliness where you're by yourself. It's the worst kind of loneliness where someone right next to you that you love feels like they're 1,000 miles apart. And you feel like everything just falls on you and your partner is so far away and you want them to be closer. You want to check in with them. You want to connect. And that emotional labor of doing the check-ins and asking, hey, are we okay? Or having the conversations where you talk about the challenges or the topics that are hard and that really matter, it starts to feel like all of it lives on your shoulders. And over time, you start to wonder, is it me? Am I too much? Am I asking for too much? Is wanting to talk to my partner actually an issue? Am I the issue? Am I unreasonable? Am I overly sensitive? Am I making things worse? If he always shuts down or avoids, maybe there's something wrong with me. And those are really normal questions for somebody who's the pursuer or the anxiously attached partner. But if I can very gently suggest this to you, they're not the right questions. When we talk about this dynamic, I want you to know it's not all on you. It's not 100% your fault, and it's not 100% his fault either. But let me just say this in case you haven't heard it enough yet. It's not unreasonable to want to talk. It's not unreasonable for you to want to hash out the problems and get reconnected and find solutions. It's actually more than reasonable. It's healthy. But here's what I need you to hear, and this is important. The way you've been going about it might actually be making things harder and might actually be ramping up his nervous system and actually winding up the cycle for both of you. And it's not because you're wrong for wanting connection, but because the strategy most people use is talking more, explaining more, pushing more, chasing harder, seeking more resolution, well, that's the exact strategy that triggers more shutdown in the avoidant nervous system. And that's not a personal failure on you, it's just two different attachment systems completely misunderstanding each other. And once you understand what's actually happening inside this dynamic, everything begins to shift. It really does. I've been doing this for almost 20 years working with couples, and I've watched this over and over. When something clicks about what's happening for him and something clicks for him about what's happening for you, and both of you feel more understood and you can name the dynamic, then you can both work with these differences not as adversaries, not as something is wrong with you or something is wrong with me, but as something we can work on together, and that changes the problem into an opportunity for attunement or alignment. And because understanding each other and what's happening inside your nervous systems and what makes each of you particularly anxious or avoidant, because this is such an important subject, in my next upcoming video, I'll be talking more to the avoidant partner about what an anxious attached person needs and what's going on inside the pursuer or the partner who's seeking to have these conversations, what's happening inside them, and what can the avoidant partner do that will help soothe and decrease the chasing or the nagging or the pursuing or the demanding and the withdrawal cycle, and what the avoidant can do that calms their partner, makes them feel more heard and connected, and ultimately more loved. And right now for you, learning to understand what helps your avoidant partner become more engaged, safer, calmer, and more emotionally open is a very powerful first step. When your partner goes quiet or he shuts down, checks out, or leaves the room and says, I don't want to do this right now, or I'm tired, why do we always have to talk about this stuff? Your nervous system reads that as rejection, abandonment, or dismissal. And it makes complete sense that it makes you feel shut out or rejected or even abandoned. But here's what's actually happening in his body in that moment when he has those reactions. But here's what's actually happening in his body in that moment. In the work by Dr. Philip Shaver and Dr. Mario Mikulincer, two of the most prominent researchers in adult attachment theory, with decades of studying exactly this dynamic, what their research showed us is both surprising and honestly really important for you to understand. Avoidantly attached people have learned that to suppress attachment needs is what works. They've learned to suppress their need for connection and for conversation about deep, hard topics, but they haven't learned to completely eliminate them. They've learned to suppress them, to push them down. And somehow, inside the marriage or the relationship, that felt sense of needing to suppress, to hold in, to avoid, is being reinforced. The pattern of how you as a couple approach hard topics is being reinforced by not only what came before your relationship, but now further enforced by how the relationship is working. And here's the distinction, because it matters enormously. When you feel disconnected or unsafe in your relationship, your distress is visible. Your nervous system moves toward the relationship. Your felt sense of needing to talk, of wanting to connect, of wanting to reconnect, of needing reassurance, resolution, and reconnection, it's what you feel and what you lean into, what you want to do. That's anxious attachment in action. It's expressive. It reaches out. It moves towards the partner. It's not bad. It's not anxious in the sense of being too much. It's not anxious in the sense of social anxiety or being too needy. It's the felt sense of feeling uneasy until you talk. And in many spaces, the need to talk, to move towards, that's really healthy. That's a good thing. You want that. But with your partner in the particular dynamic that you guys have, it brings up tension, overwhelm, and the fear of being engulfed. So in those moments when you're moving towards your partner, they're experiencing something very different. They're needing to move away. His system does the opposite of what yours does. And his system likely learned very early on that expressing attachment needs, they don't get a reliable response. Maybe they create more conflict. Maybe they just get avoidance, so they learn to suppress. That mechanism of turning the emotional volume down fast to avoid the pain of reaching out and not being met is likely how they got through their childhood or how they implicitly learned in their family dynamics to connect and stay safe. So, as a mechanism, your partner has learned to turn down the emotional volume to avoid the pain of reaching out, to avoid the pain of not being met. And now they're doing that with you because it's what they learned early on in their life, and then your dynamic is reinforcing that need. And your partner may have said they were fine, but the research shows us that the physiological measures such as heart rate, cortisol, skin conductance, they tell a completely different story. What Shaver and Mikulincer's research actually captured is this exact dynamic physiologically. When avoidantly attached individuals were exposed to attachment distress, having these kinds of hard conversations or images or words, scenarios that activated their attachment system in this avoidant way showed that their conscious mind reported low anxiety, so they told and self-reported that they had low anxiety, and outwardly they might have looked calm or regulated, but they were actually in a state of what we call vagal dorsal shutdown. Their bodies were responding to threat even while their minds were working hard to suppress that signal because the emotional intensity exceeded what we call their window of tolerance. And we all have a certain window or capacity of how much stress we can tolerate. And once we go outside that barometer, the window closes and the brain, the heart, and the breath, they are not coherent. The person is not actually calm. The person is dysregulated. It's not that your partner doesn't have feelings or can't sense hurt feelings or emotions. It's just that your partner regulates differently and over-regulates through distance, through getting quieter, or through space. Talking about the window of tolerance, here's an image really quickly to show you what happens or what the window of tolerance looks like, and the barometer that when we step outside of that window of tolerance, we either get louder or we get quieter and more shut down. And in the case of your partner, when they exit that window of tolerance and they shut down, they get colder, more quiet, more distant, and they try to take space. They try to disengage. They try to avoid because their nervous system feels like it's under attack or threat. Now, I know that when you're engaging with your partner, that's not your intention. You're not trying to threaten your partner, but that is how they perceive this pursuit to talk. That is the impact of what they're feeling. Even though it's not your intention, it's interesting and helpful to think about impact, even though that might not be your intention. Your partner's intention might not be to avoid you per se or to make you feel dismissed. Their intention might be to get some space, to regulate, to calm down. And the impact is still you're being avoided, you're being dismissed, you're not being heard, you're not being connected with, you're being rejected, and you're being abandoned through impact. And the same thing happens with your partner. Your intention to talk is a good thing. Your intention to connect with them is great. But the impact lands for them like a threat or like a pursuit or like a chase. And all of us, if we are chased, we tend to run. To your partner, that pursuit feels like a sympathetic nervous system attack. Your avoidant partner isn't running from you. They are running from a perceived sense of loss of self. They are running from an attack. They are shutting down from a perceived sense of being engulfed or overwhelmed. So your partner, while not being unaffected or not feeling, is trying to cope with the overwhelm in a very different way than you. He's the opposite. When you go to talk, he likely gets more flooded or overwhelmed, and his system is doing the only thing it knows how to do, which is shut down before the issue gets any bigger. Run away or walk away before the explosion happens, before things are said that can't be taken back, or before behaviors and actions that are really damaging occur. And that is not indifference. That's a coping mechanism. That is a nervous system that learned a long time ago that feeling too much was not safe, so it needs to be suppressed and it needs to be reduced somehow to stay safe. Now, going back to the research of Shaver and Mukalinser, they also found something that I think is one of the most humanizing pieces of research on avoidant attachment work, which is that avoidantly attached people, they don't lack the capacity for intimacy. They just engage with it very differently. What avoidants lack is the felt sense of safety that would allow them to access it. The capacity is there. The road to it is just blocked. And that's a very different problem than someone who simply doesn't want to be close to you or doesn't care about you or actively wants you to feel dismissed or actively wants to disengage because they don't care about you. Maybe they just haven't had enough experiences to feel safe to engage in these intense relational conversations. So here's the painful part. Many people like you, when their partner shuts down, they do the most natural thing in the world. They move towards their partner. We try to explain more. We try to make them understand better. We change how we're sharing what we said in hopes that maybe it'll land and be received. Or we follow them into the other room and say, hey, can we just talk? Can we finish this conversation? We push for connection, understanding, and resolution because the unresolved tension, it feels unbearable. It's problematic, and we can tell in the future it's going to get worse. And we love our partner, and we don't want to have that dynamic. And here's something to understand. The more this dynamic has been at play inside the relationship, the more the distress in the relationship increases and frustrations grow, and the more that the couple is unable to talk about the actual issues that they also need to address, because every conversation turns into this particular pattern, and then that's all you talk about. You always shut down. You always chase me. You're always following me around. You don't give me room. You're too much. You're too sensitive. Why are you yelling and being so emotionally volatile with me? Why are you always running away? And then you're not actually able to talk about the stuff that you also need to talk about. The kids, the finances, the intimacy, the in-laws, the house, the future plans, time management, you name it. Most problems somehow turn back into this pattern and needing to talk about this issue while leaving all the other issues. For you, the fastest way to feel safe is to reconnect, to resolve, and to talk, and to hear, we're going to be okay. I care about you. I want to hear you. But the dynamic that plays out instead is that the more you move towards him, the more dysregulated he gets. And as that feeling intensifies for him, the further he pulls back, and the more he self-regulates with distance, the more distant he gets, and then the more intensified your feelings of being abandoned, not heard, not being listened, being dismissed, and distant or shut out, the more dysregulated you also get, and then both of you have your own version of going outside of that window of tolerance. And of course, as he pulls back, the more activated you get. This is the anxious avoidant cycle in its most clear form. And both of you are doing the most rational thing based on your particular nervous systems, education, background, familial upbringing, and yet you are both triggering each other into your worst patterns. Muka Linser's research on what he calls hyperactivating and deactivating attachment strategies captures this perfectly. Anxious attachment hyperactivates. It turns on the volume of distress signals to try to get a response. It goes outside of that window of tolerance and starts getting louder and talking more and seeking more conversation and seeking more proximity, while avoidant individuals go outside that window of tolerance and they deactivate. They turn down the volume. They avoid being overwhelmed. They take space. And you put these two together inside a room, inside a relationship, and they amplify each other like two magnets coming together and pushing away, when before they used to come together and create attraction. So your partner feels like the relationship is too much, too intense, too consuming, and his deactivation confirms his worst fear, that you are too much. And his deactivating strategies confirm for you that he is avoidant, that he doesn't want to talk to you, that he doesn't care, and that you are not going to be able to talk about things. So if you and your partner want a different outcome, you not only need to take a different path, you need to see this challenge and issue in a very different way, which is he's not avoiding because he doesn't love you or care about you. He is trying to self-soothe or self-regulate in a very different way than you are. But we also need a different strategy that you two and that you both can engage in that gets you a different outcome. Let's talk about what actually works. There are 3 things that create the conditions for an avoidant partner to genuinely open up, to not perform openness, to not appease and act like a robot saying the right things or trying to do it right for you, but then you feel like they're not actually genuinely connected to you, but to actually open up, to be more sensitive, to actually connect with you, to be engaged, not as a performance, but as something that you both can feel in your hearts, where he's listening, where he's really understanding you and actually feeling being there with you. So here's the first thing that avoidant needs to get in place so that they can do that. In order to engage in this kind of way, avoidance needs safety before depth. First, this is the most counterintuitive piece, so I want to be really clear about it. Your instinct, it's a completely valid instinct to want to lean in, to connect, and to talk. But your partner needs safety before depth. In your mind, you're thinking, once we talk this through, we'll feel close again, and by talking, we'll get that closeness. Once we resolve this, things will feel secure. Once we talk this through, we'll feel safe again. When we lean in, we'll actually be doing what we need to so that this issue doesn't happen again, and so we feel connected, and so maybe it doesn't pop up again, or at least we'll understand each other. But that's what you're thinking. His system works the opposite. It works very differently. For him, it works in the opposite direction. He can only access depth after safety is established, which means the charged, high-intensity conversation where you most need him to show up emotionally is exactly the moment that he is exactly the moment he is least neurologically and emotionally capable of meeting you. The practical translation of this is this: stop trying so hard to have the conversations in the hard moments. Now, I know that you've probably already tried that and it sounds simple. It is genuinely one of the hardest shifts that couples can make and someone like you can make when you're anxiously attached, because the hard moment is when your nervous system is screaming for resolution, is when you're feeling like you really have to lean in, but the goal shifts from we need to resolve this now to how do we get both of us regulated and calm enough so that we can come back to this, so that we can check in on it. And then if we're too dysregulated and too much outside our window of tolerance, then we take breaks. The second step is you need structure. One of the patterns that Mukhalensar's research found is that in avoidant attachment individuals, there is a deep aversion to open-ended emotional engagement. Conversations that feel like they have no exit, no boundaries, or no clear endpoint, they are exhausting, taxing, frustrating for the avoidant individual, and they will run. That fear that's often completely operating outside of conscious awareness is this for the avoidant individual. If I open up this door, will I be trapped? Will I not be able to leave? Will I structurally be trapped inside this conversation and the fear? And that is scary. Structure directly addresses that fear. When an avoidant individual knows that there is a structure, meaning the way that we start the conversation has some level of consent and is safe, and then there's some clear endpoint or ability to pause, helps the avoidant lean in, because now they're not afraid that they're going to get trapped in an hours-long conversation that winds up and then just winds up more, or just winds up, calms down, and then winds up and turns into a big problem again. They're hyper aware of that pattern, and they will avoid it if it's been existing for quite some time. So they do have some intelligence to be avoidant here. There is some awareness or intelligence to this particular pattern that they have. It's just not working inside their relationship because you two are wired so differently, and because ultimately avoidance or shutting down also isn't a complete solution. It's partial and it's helpful at times, but too much of that, that's not good either. So part 2 is having a clear structure that addresses this fear of being overwhelmed or engulfed or not having a clear exit or explicit permission to pause. And this part is really important and crucial, that both of you or one of you can say, hey, let's take a pause, or that you guys will have an open container of a certain amount of time to talk, and then you can pause again and then you can come back to it. And that tells his nervous system, there is an end to this. I will not be consumed by it. I will not be overwhelmed, and my partner will honor and respect my need to take a break, and my partner will even call a timeout for us. My partner will even notice what's happening for me, and instead of pushing past that edge, they can take a pause. We can take a beat with the understanding that we will come back. The third thing that avoidants need is they need to learn how to come back to conversations. Ultimately, that will help the anxious partner feel safer to allow breaks to occur, and it will help the avoidant individual show that they care and that they're interested and that they love and are engaged in the partner and how the partner feels, and they're engaged in the relationship and how it works. So we need 3 things structurally. 1 is safety before depth. 2 is structure. And 3, an ability to return and take as many breaks as needed and then return again. If couples do that right there, it changes their whole relationship. So let's talk about how to actually engage in these steps so that you and your partner can have a game plan and you can talk to him about it. When couples create a game plan that allows for breaks and an adequate amount of time for the breaks with a return, what Shaver and Mukhalensar's research shows us is that with consistent, predictable responsiveness of we can step back, I will come back, we will come back, it actually begins to reshape the avoidance attachment system and the patterning that they recognize to, oh, we can be safe when we talk about things, and I actually like checking in with my partner, and I notice it makes a difference, and it doesn't always just turn into more problems or more negativity or more chasing or more eruptions. Instead, we're allowed to take breaks and I'm safe, and we come back and I'm safe and we're safe and our relationship is better. And then that sense of reliability or safety becomes the new norm. So let's talk about the practical steps that you can actually use now. The 4-step approach that helps couples. And I want to be clear, it works best when both people are engaged in it. Step 1, name the pattern, not the person. It's not you're avoiding this again, you're avoiding me again, or you're being too emotional, you're being too sensitive. Either one of those puts both of you on defense immediately. It's a character accusation. His system reads, you're being shut down again, as an attack, and the shutdown goes even faster and deeper and stronger. And as most studies on healthy conflict resolution point out, language such as you are, you always triggers a defensive mechanism. It's one of those few times we can say always. So a better phrasing is to say, we're in that cycle again. We are getting kind of worked up, aren't we? And that is a completely different thing. It puts you outside of the pattern. It puts him outside the pattern and notices the pattern or cycle as the problem and not the other person. And this shift from you to we, oh, it's a game changer inside of a relationship, because now we can work on the pattern and it's not you who's defective or you who's the issue. It's us, it's we. Remember, this isn't just him being avoidant. It's both of you activating each other in very different ways. It's a pattern you two are working on together. You're a team working on the cycle. You're not enemies, you're not adversaries blaming one another. You are a team trying to address this cycle and this pattern that each of you are in part responsible for. Now, step 2 is create a system of timeouts in advance. Something that you guys can do, that you can call a timeout in the middle of a conflict before it gets outside that window of tolerance. Sadly, what's been happening is your partner just calls that timeout by leaving you hanging, or you just chase them around. You're not really prepared and you haven't agreed on a system of how to call a timeout and then what that actually means, because timeouts have been looking a lot like somebody avoiding, not coming back. So now we want to change that. We want to create a timeout that says we're done talking, we're pausing, no more explaining, no more debating, we just stop, hard stop. This timeout is not a way to excuse yourself from the conversation indefinitely. This timeout is not an avoidant tactic. It is a safety regulating mechanism for you as a couple to pause, calm, and then return. And what the data and research shows is that when systems get activated, when human beings get dysregulated, they need at least 30 minutes, if not more, to actually calm down. So when that heart rate gets going, especially over 100 beats per minute, and the tension in the body increases and the brain is, dispersing cortisol in the body, and you've got adrenaline and you're feeling anxious or your partner's feeling angry and shut down, when all of that is happening, we do need to take a pause. We do need to calm that system down. And it takes at least 30 minutes, if not longer. That timeout is a tool and not a trapdoor. It's not an avoidance strategy, and it's not a way to win. It's a tool for protecting the relationship and shifting this pattern that you guys have as a couple. Step 3, that return is non-negotiable. This is where many couples fall apart with the system. They agree on timeouts, and if you're the avoidant, you probably know about this all too well, is that you've agreed to timeouts, or maybe your partner just does it and you have no choice, but then there isn't a return, or it never happens, and then you are left quietly holding the issue and it doesn't really dissolve. So when a timeout is called, there is a specific return that comes with it. It might be, I need to step away for 30 minutes. It might be, we need to pause for an hour, but we will come back. We will check back in. And maybe if I'm the avoidant partner, I will actually come back. I will actually initiate the return. And then if the subject is too intense when we reinitiate and check in again, we can call a timeout again. We want to create a new conditioned pattern where timeouts are allowed and returns happen. This is a great starting point for so many couples. I recall one specific couple who was like this. Their conversations were so amplified. Their fights quite often led to discussions of divorce and ending it, and I should have never been with you. And I remember sharing this particular skill with them, and they said, okay, we'll give it a try, Luis. So about 4 or 5 weeks go by, and the couple shows up, and I ask them, how's it going with this? And they say, well, we're taking a lot of time outs, we're checking in about things. And the wife then says to me a classic thing that I hear quite often when I am suggesting this new pattern interrupt, this repatterning for the relationship. And she says to me, when are we actually going to be able to sit for like 30 minutes or 50 minutes and actually hash this stuff out and get some real resolution? And I respond by saying, that makes a lot of sense. I want you to have that. I want you to build that capacity. That's important for me. But first, let me ask you this, because I know that you likely feel like taking a time out and returning doesn't really feel like it's solving the issues. It's just maybe putting like a stop and not really actually solving things. So let me ask you a question. And looking at her, I said, let me ask you a question. Are your fights as big as they used to be? And she said, no, we're not fighting like we used to. We're not threatening divorce like we used to. We're not saying some of the cruel things we used to. But we're not solving the issues, Luis. I said, I get it. I want you to be able to solve this stuff. Trust me. But let me ask you first. Are you guys taking a lot of timeouts and coming back still? And she said, yeah, he's coming back more often. I'm initiating, and he's being more open. But then when he calls timeout right away, he still is like very quick to call these timeouts. Like, when's he gonna actually like sit with me in this stuff? I said, I get it. But when you guys talk, are you guys talking more often about the hard things, even though maybe you're not talking longer, but you're doing it more often? And she said, yeah, I feel a little bit safer, and it does feel like we're talking about this stuff more often. And the husband says, yeah, that's how I feel too. Like, we're talking about things more often, but I understand she wants the resolution. I just still get overwhelmed pretty quickly. I said, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. But let me ask you guys, do you feel like there's more kind of positivity in your relationship? And the husband, who's the avoidant, says, yeah, it feels like things are a little lighter lately, like it's easier to talk with her. And when we do talk about things, I don't feel quite as anxious or frustrated or angry or like I need to run. I said, oh, that's really positive. So your capacity is building. He said, yeah, but it's not as fast as she wants it, but it does feel like I'm building that capacity. I said, well, that's good. It's like weightlifting. It's generally pretty slow at the beginning, but over time, our capacity or our muscles do grow. And it sounds like that's happening for you. And then the wife pauses and kind of goes, Luis, you're right. I guess our relationship is getting better. We are talking about things more often. He's growing in the way that I've really wanted him to do, which is he's coming back to me more often. So when we do have an issue, I feel less anxiety to bring it up right away. Or when he takes a break, I don't feel like I need to chase him as much, and I don't feel quite as anxious or destabilized the way that I used to. I said, that's good. That's how we build capacity. First, we repattern the dynamic that you have of going outside that window of tolerance, and you take breaks, and then both of you are doing the hard work where you're allowing him to take breaks, and he's doing the work, the very hard work for him of learning how to come back and feel safe, and you're reinforcing that he's safe by allowing the breaks and both of you taking breaks in a way that is agreed upon, and that you're honoring those breaks. And if you do that and you keep doing this, trust me, that capacity will grow. And then they both smiled, held hands, and said, I guess we are growing. And that's what I want for you. I just want you to see it this way. I want you to understand that doing this work with couples, I know this works. Everything I just described does require something very significant from each of you. It requires you to slow down when your nervous system wants to speed up, to give space when your partner feels overwhelmed and you're just getting started and sharing, to give space when everything inside you wants to close that distance, to trust the structure that when anxiety is telling you that this isn't enough, you can take that break and that you two will come back. And it is genuinely really hard for someone who's anxiously attached to learn to honor these breaks, because your attachment system is exquisitely fine-tuned to the possibility of threat. If we don't check in, if we don't talk about things, you are very attuned to that feeling of disconnection, of loss. And the strategies I'm describing, such as pausing, taking space, and coming back to it, at first it will feel tremendously hard for you. Now, let's talk about what this asks of him. And I want to say something clearly because I think it's important. This is not a video about how you need to manage yourself better as an anxious or a pursuer individual so that he can stay comfortable. That's the bad advice that you've likely gotten or already tried and know it's not going to work. You can't ignore that you as a couple need to talk, and you can't ignore that you as an individual find closeness through healthy conversation. Couples need to talk. There is absolutely work on his side of this. He needs to learn that emotional conversations are survivable and that this short-term discomfort of staying in one of these dialogues is worth the long-term reward of intimacy and connection and getting through challenges. And he will learn that if he can take breaks. If you two, and even you, sometimes lead calling a timeout and you guys call timeouts together, and if he works on coming back, and I know that is scary and it's hard for an avoidantly attached person, but it is what ultimately helps the avoidant individual. But he needs to learn how to use this timeout, and this agreed upon timeout is a huge change for you guys. It's not something that now he's using as a trapdoor or not discussed by you guys. Now you guys are having a clear conversation, and he needs to learn that after that timeout and after he's calmed himself enough, he does need to come back, and he's going to get better at that if he knows that you two have a strong timeout protocol and you guys practice this enough times. He will start to learn that the timeout works. And then if he's game, and if he really is interested in working on this, and if you are really supporting by showing that the timeouts are honored and respected, and sometimes you re-engage and say, hey, are you ready to check in again? And he says, maybe not yet. And you go, okay, will you let me know when you're ready? And he needs to learn that he can start re-engaging with you. At some level, he needs to be willing to look at why his nervous system needs to take those breaks, what happened in his life to make him this way. And one of the best ways for him to do that is to start working on re-engaging with you with the knowing that he can take a time out at any time that his body gets dysregulated, and that you will even call the time out for you as a couple with the agreement that you two will re-engage, you two will come back, and then you'll take a time out as often as you need again and again. The research actually gives us really great optimism and hope here, because what the research shows us is that when couples do this, they get what is called attachment security priming. Avoidant attachment system is not a fixed trait. It's actually a learned strategy, a strategy that was nurtured and trained into the individual consciously and unconsciously by others, and consciously and unconsciously by the individual. But it's not hardwired into them. It can be changed. Your avoidant partner can become someone that leans in and engages. Your partner can learn that healthy connection and attachment can work through engagement and healthy self-regulating and co-regulating mechanisms, such as taking breaks and coming back. Because with the right skills and with the right techniques, you can both grow so that both of you are not busy surviving, but instead you're connecting. So here is what I want you to walk away with today. Your partner is not avoidant because he doesn't love you. You're not anxious because you're broken or too much. Patterns don't change overnight, they change through time. They work through repeated repatterning and practice. And one way that I can help you outside of this video to continue to grow in this area is, one, if you're looking for private coaching, feel free to check out our website and see if one of our coaches is available. Step two, down in the description below, I've included a worksheet that you and your partner can both do individually that helps you understand more about the window of tolerance, what each of you is like when you're exiting that window of tolerance, and then with the worksheet, having a conversation so you guys can talk about the pattern and not about each other. You can talk about the issue and not about the blame or about the attack that both of you likely feel when you're having this conversation. To get that worksheet, go in the description, and I've left the link there for you. And in my next video, I'll be talking about what the avoidant partner can do and to understand what their anxious partner needs and why their partner tends to pursue or chase or demand, and what that dynamic is really about from the anxious person's point of view. So if you've enjoyed today's video, be sure to give this a like, leave a comment, and subscribe.